about this. So let's get into the analysis of Pinocchio. All right, so I was inspired to watch the movie because of how I've been feeling. One of my cards in that deck that I have is called Puppet on a String. And so I kept on thinking about Pinocchio, and then, and Haley says Pinocchio was just my dream the other night. Oh, good. I think you're gonna have a good time with this. So tell me what you think. I kept on thinking about Pinocchio, and then my mom says it was her favorite movie. So I was like, really? That's your favorite movie? And she's like, yeah. So I'm like, it just kind of like stuck with me. Like, you should rewatch that movie because she wanted to, she was like, I want to watch it. So I set her up on the Disney account and I was like, yeah, okay, here, so she could watch it. And I asked her, she liked it because she seemed to enjoy it. So I was like, cool. So I decided to watch it and I actually ended up watching the live action version of it. And by the way, you all, if you haven't seen it, you should really see it. And the live action version is really good. And I feel like, when was it advertised? Maybe I missed it, but it seemed like it never got like the attention that it should have gotten. It's a really good movie. Tom Hanks is Geppetto. Like, it's a good movie. It's so freaking well done. Like, the streets of Italy like are really cool. Like, it's pretty dope. And it's supposed to be, so the Pinocchio story is set in Siena. If you don't know, I always wonder where it was set because it's Italian. So it's historically an Italian story, but we're going to focus on what the movie is and how it's done. So it starts off with Geppetto. So Geppetto, to me, I'm just going to break down this movie. So full spoilers, but by now I think you guys all saw the movie at least one time in your life. So rewatch it. I don't think I'm going to ruin anything. But Geppetto is a maker of things. So let's think about Geppetto as a creator. Okay, now some of the things that he's made the most are cuckoo clocks. So he has all these prized cuckoo clocks that he refuses to sell, which is really important. The reason why he's saying he doesn't want to sell them is because it seems like Constanza, who must be his late wife, really loved those. So he had kept them there. So it was just released. So the live action was released on September 28th, 2022. Oh, so this is good. So we're actually kind of like in time. What in the world? Like, I feel like it hasn't had enough like pickup. This is a really good movie. All right, good. So this is nice. We're on time. Okay. And then he has his son, who, and the way that we have it in the movie is that the son clearly passed at some point. So Geppetto has lost, it seems like, a wife and a son, and he is longing, and so he holds on to these memories. So he has a son that's gone, and then the memory of his wife is there. So you could tell he's pretty much depressed. He's this creator that's created all these different things, but the biggest thing that he's missing is his extension of love, right? He has his pets, Figaro and then Cleo, which is the fish. So Figaro is a little cat, little kitten, and then you have the fish, which is Cleo. He also has a relationship to a condor that he feeds. I think it's a condor, but it's a big scavenger seabird. So I am saying condor because I feel like that's what they are, but it's a scavenger seabird who only eats trash because they let us know that. So you have all these different elements going. So the first thing I want to talk about is, one, Geppetto is working with the elements. And so the movie starts off where you're aware of these elements, but also with Pinocchio. And so Pinocchio, of course, is made out of pine, out of wood. So that's where the name comes from, Pinocchio. But as he's creating Pinocchio and finishing the final touches on Pinocchio, he's speaking over Pinocchio, and he is essentially creating, to me, what we did not so long ago, or at least what I did. He made a conjure doll. Remember my little conjure doll here? Here she is. And so he made a conjure doll, and this was all in the memory of his son who passed. And he recognized the uniqueness of Pinocchio, but he also recognized that there's something special about, he wanted to remember his son. So that's what he made. He made something to remind him of this beautiful life that he once had in his life, this something that he was longing for. Geppetto was like longing for love. So now, here are your elements. Cleo, right? She's of the sea. She's a fish. You have Figaro. He's of the land. He's a cat. Then you have Pinocchio, and you're wondering what element is Pinocchio connected to? Fire. And also not just thinking about it in the fire sense, but potential for fire. 2 times in the movie does Pinocchio catch on fire. That's really important to realize, is because it's so fascinating, that concept of fire and working, and the power of fire, and what wood can mean, the potential, right? The spark, the potential for a spark. And so Pinocchio represents that. And then you, of course, have the condor that has the bird eye view. So the condor, of course, is the one that, and these are the four elements that he's working with. But then he also works with what? The sky. So how does Pinocchio come to life? He looks up at the sky and he makes a wish. And it's that wish I wish I might, may I have this wish I dream tonight. And he had to make it with his full heart. And essentially, he wished for Pinocchio to be real. And so, in making him real, so he falls asleep, and then of course the fairy godmother comes in, and played by Cynthia Erivo, and she gets to sing the whole "When You Wish Upon a Star" is there. And I haven't gotten to Jiminy Cricket. I'll get there. Exactly. So Spirit, you see it. So she comes in, right, and helps spark that spirit within him. She touches him a few times. The first time Pinocchio comes alive, the first thing he says is that the first thing he says is he's mimicking, so he has no mind, so a real puppet, right? He's behaving as a puppet. So then she has to give him some level of consciousness that he can think for himself. And so bam, she gives him the level of consciousness, but he's missing something. He's missing a little bit of conscience, right? That moral compass that we all have, that inner voice. But he has who can help them? Well, Jiminy Cricket is around. So let's give you a little bit of Jiminy Cricket's background story. He essentially comes into Geppetto's workshop and just as a regular cricket trying to warm himself. He was out there cold and poor. And I think about Jiminy Cricket like a spirit guide, and how I like to think about spirit guides in general. Sometimes, there's a very negative connotation, especially from people who come from a more Abrahamic religious background, that spirits can be demonic. I don't think that. I think that spirits, especially if you have ancestors working with you who are not necessarily perfect, when they do come into your life, there is a sense of positivity and earnest, and that they want to help you. And Jiminy Cricket reminds me of that, right? This kind of lost creature, no place to be, and then has given purpose to essentially help. And so, in this sense, he becomes Pinocchio's consciousness. And there's a joke in there that they have outsourced consciousness. So remember that concept of outsourcing consciousness. So that's what he is. And so anytime that Pinocchio needs him, he's going to help essentially guide him along the way. Okay, now Pinocchio's wish, of course, is he wants to become a real boy. Now, the way to become a real boy is being brave, being honest, and also being unselfish. And she tells him that you're going to go through a lot of hard times in life to be able to do that. So already I feel like this is about life in general, right? This idea that we sometimes feel kind of restricted, right? That woodness, that stiffness in life, and that in order to become who we strive to be, our authentic selves, there is a journey that we have to take. And that's what she's pretty much telling him.